Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius. I didn't plan to walk out of that seminar, had my blazer on notebook. Open the speaker was saying all the right things: growth mindset, resilience, high performance. But somewhere between slide 7 and my second cup of burnt hotel coffee, it hit me. I didn't belong here anymore. I wasn't growing. I wasn't resilient. I wasn't even performing. I was surviving on fumes, smiling through clenched teeth, pretending that spreadsheets and strategy decks still meant something to me. So I stood up, nodded politely at no one in particular, and left. The sunlight outside was too bright. It was one of those crisp, Midwestern mornings, blue sky breeze, sharp enough to cut through your thoughts. I had nowhere to go. No real plan. So I just walked past the office towers I used to dream of working in, past the cafes where I used to take conference calls, double espresso in hand, thinking I was important. Eventually, I ended up somewhere I hadn't been in years. A public library was quiet in a way the city never is. That kind of soft silence that wraps around your shoulders like a blanket. I wandered past rows of books like a ghost, not looking for anything, just trying to escape the noise in my own head. That's when I met him. He was sitting at a back table, silver hair pulled into a short ponytail, wire-rimmed glasses, cardigan like something out of a 90s movie. He looked like someone who should be telling bedtime stories to grandchildren, not reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. "You look lost," he said. Without looking up, I forced a smile. "Maybe I am." He closed the book slowly, carefully. "That's a good start." I raised an eyebrow, being lost, realizing it. His name was Walt, retired philosophy professor, part-time library volunteer. We talked for a few minutes. Nothing deep. Weather books, coffee preferences. I was about to leave when he asked me a question that stopped me cold. "What's the one thing you work on every day?" I laughed awkwardly. "Emails, deadlines, beating traffic?" He nodded, not unkindly. "No, I mean you. What part of you do you work on?" I didn't have an answer, and that silence. My silence seemed to say everything. He didn't press, just reached into his satchel and handed me a small leather-bound notebook. No branding, no label, just a simple black cover and thick cream-colored pages. "Try this," he said. "Write one thing down, something you did today to become the man you want to be. Doesn't have to be big, just has to be real." I stared at the notebook for a second. "I'm not really a journaling type," I said. He smiled. Neither was Marcus. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the notebook. My apartment was too clean, too quiet. I downsized after the divorce sold the house, gave my ex the furniture she wanted. Told myself I liked simplicity. But the truth is, it was hollow. I flipped open the journal. First page blank, second page blank, third page. A quote scribbled in neat handwriting. "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." It was like a slap in the face and a whisper at the same time. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I didn't go to the gym or check my email or scroll through my feed pretending to care. I went back to the library. Walt was there, same table, same book. "Thought you weren't the journaling type," he said without looking up. "I still might not be," I replied, sliding into the chair across from him. "But I've got questions." He grinned. "Good. Let's start with the right ones." Over the next hour, Walt didn't preach. He didn't sell me on Stoicism or hand me a syllabus. He just talked about how he used to be angry, restless, chasing promotions and accolades that never seemed to quiet the noise in his head. How he burned out, walked away, and started over by doing one small thing each day to become more aligned with who he wanted to be, not who the world expected him to be. He called it inner work, not some new age buzzword, not productivity hacks, just discipline, reflection, and intentionality. "Your problem," he said, tapping the table, "isn't that you don't have goals. It's that you've built your identity around outcomes." I leaned back. He was right. I'd spent years defining myself by titles: project manager, senior VP, director. But the minute those were stripped away, I didn't know who I was anymore. That night, I opened the journal again. still blank except for that quote. So I wrote one sentence. Today I didn't pretend that was it. I hadn't faked a smile, hadn't said, I'm fine when I wasn't, hadn't performed. I just showed up, and it felt like something cracked open, not healed, not fixed, just open. There's a kind of grief that comes when you realize you've been living a life that wasn't yours. Not because someone forced you into it, but because you were too distracted, too afraid, too proud to ask better questions. That was me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like running from it. The next day, I went back to the library. Not for answers, but for the space to ask better questions. And that's where this story begins. Not with a breakthrough, not with a breakdown, just a beginning. They say big changes start with small steps. But nobody talks about how heavy those steps feel when your heart's still dragging behind. Walt had given me one assignment. Write one thing I did each day that brought me closer to the man I wanted to be. He made it sound simple, but the moment I tried to live it, I realized just how unaware I'd been of my own patterns. Take Monday, for example. I woke up late, ignored 3 texts, skipped breakfast, honked at a teenager who crossed the street too slowly, then sat in my car outside the library and debated whether I should just drive away. Instead, I wrote, today I notice how fast I blame others for how I feel. Not exactly inspiring, but it was honest. That night, I stared at those words longer than I'd care to admit. It wasn't the act itself that got me. It was the fact that I couldn't remember the last time I held a mirror to my own behavior without making an excuse. The next morning, I tried again. This time, I kept a tally in my head of how many times I complained out loud or silently. By noon, I'd already hit 12. The coffee was too weak. The guy in front of me took forever at the ATM. My ex didn't reply to my email about Noah. The weather was too hot, then too cold. That night, I didn't even need a journal prompt. I am addicted to control. Walt called it mental static. The useless noise we create by resisting things we can't change. I used to get mad when it rained, he said, as we sat outside the library on a bench the following day. Then one day I realized the sky didn't owe me sunshine. He chuckled like it was obvious. But to me, it wasn't. It still isn't. By midweek, the experiment was wearing on me. The more I tried to become aware of my attitude, the more frustrated I became. I wasn't getting better. I was just watching myself fail in real time. I snapped at a cashier who asked if I wanted to sign up for a rewards card. I ignored another call from Noah, my son. Didn't even let it ring out, just hit decline. I lied to a friend about why I didn't want to meet for lunch. Told him I was busy, but really I didn't want to be seen. Not like this. Not in the middle of becoming someone else, or admitting I hadn't become anyone real at all. And yet, I still wrote, I am not as patient as I thought I pretend to be, more put together than I am. I resist silence because it shows me what I haven't faced. By Friday, something shifted. I was driving home from the grocery store when I saw a car pulled over on the side of the road. Flat tire hazard lights blinking. A young woman stood nearby, arms folded clearly, trying to figure out what to do. I drove past. 5 seconds later, I pulled over. I don't know why. I hadn't helped anyone in a long time, not without some professional reason, client contract obligation. But this was different. It was instinct, or maybe it was something deeper, something quieter. She was surprised when I walked up. You okay? She nodded. Yeah, I think so. I've just never changed a tire before I offered to help. It took maybe 15 minutes. No conversation beyond the basics. When it was done, she thanked me and I said, no problem, and walked back to my car. I didn't expect anything from it, but that night I slept better than I had in weeks. There was no applause, no epiphany, just a strange peace, like something inside me had clicked into place. And that was the night I finally understood what Walt meant when he said, you don't fix yourself all at once, you shape yourself slowly, like stone meeting water. Because that act, helping someone without needing recognition, felt like a brick, a small, solid brick laid into the foundation of someone I could become proud of. Saturday morning, I sat with Walt again. He noticed something different in my face before I even spoke. You look lighter, he said. I told him about the tire. He nodded. That's what happens when you stop making everything about you. I smiled. It wasn't a big deal. Neither is brushing your teeth, he said, but forget to do it every day and you'll feel the decay. We sat there in silence for a while, watching the breeze rustle the leaves above us. Then he turned to me. Attitude, he said. That's where it starts. Not because it solves everything, but because it's the filter through which you see everything. I wrote that down as soon as I got home. The following week, I decided to narrow my focus. Each day, I picked one trait to practice on purpose. Monday, gratitude. I forced myself to say thank you for everything, even the annoying stuff. Tuesday, patience. I sat through a long wait at the DMV without checking my phone once. Wednesday, honesty. I admitted to a friend that I'd been struggling not to vent, but to be real. Each small action felt like lifting a weight I didn't know I was carrying. And every night the journal was waiting. The pages were starting to fill, not just with observations, but with me. A version of me I'd never slowed down long enough to meet. But the hardest part, Thursday, that's when my ex called Noah got into a fight. She said he's suspended for 2 days. I thought you should know. I asked if she wanted me to talk to him. She said, I don't know if he wants to talk to you. That sentence crushed me. But I didn't argue. I didn't ask for details or try to defend myself. Instead, I sat in silence for a few minutes, then wrote, Today I chose not to react. It was small, but for me it was everything. Because the old me, the me from a few months ago, would have made it about me, would have blamed, deflected, or collapsed under the guilt. This version, he just let it be. Not because he didn't care, but because caring, I'm learning, doesn't always mean controlling. By Sunday, I had a new sentence taped to my bathroom mirror. You are not your impulses, you are the space between them. Walt smiled when I showed it to him. That one took me 50 years to learn, he said. You're doing okay. They say if you want to see someone's values, look at how they spend their time. And for a long time, mine would have looked like a Jackson Pollock painting. Chaotic, busy, but somehow still empty. That changed the morning Walt slid a small card across the library table. It read, Start before sunrise. List 3 priorities, reflect on your mortality. Then live accordingly. I laughed. That's a bit intense for a Tuesday. He smiled, folding his hands like a teacher waiting for a student to catch on. It's only intense, he said, if you think you have unlimited tomorrows. So the next morning I tried it. Woke up at 5:47 a.m., didn't scroll my phone, didn't check the news. I just sat in silence, breathing, watching light creep through the window blinds. It felt strange, like I was sneaking into a version of myself that had always existed but was buried beneath to-do lists and noise. I wrote 3 things in the notebook. 1, call my son. 2, decline the freelance project. I didn't want 3, take a walk without headphones. Simple things, but hard in ways I didn't expect. Calling Noah was the worst. It rang 3 times before it clicked to voicemail. I froze, then hung up before the beep. I couldn't leave a message. Not yet. I told myself I'd try again tomorrow. The second task was surprisingly freeing. I emailed a former colleague, politely turning down a project that would have paid well, but drained me dry. Not aligned with my current focus. I wrote that one sentence felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The third, I walked 2 miles through the park without distraction. I heard my own thoughts clearly for the first time in months. Most of them weren't pretty, but they were mine. That night, I wrote, Time is not money, it's breath. The days that followed became small rituals. Mornings began early. I set priorities small and real. Sometimes as simple as drink water with intention, or forgive yourself for yesterday. I used a pen again. A wall calendar. Scratched lines through tasks, not for productivity, but for purpose. The shift was slow but steady. It wasn't about becoming more efficient. It was about becoming less scattered. One afternoon, I asked Walt, do you ever miss your old life? The university, the lectures, the accolades? He shook his head. Not really. I gave 30 years to a system that measured time in semesters, not seasons. Now I wake up, read a paragraph of Seneca, drink coffee, and make soup, I chuckled. Soup, he nodded. Simple, honest, like a good day. I paused. What if a good day doesn't fix everything? He leaned in, voice softer than usual. It doesn't have to. It only has to be lived. That evening, my ex called again. Noah's home, you want to talk to him? My pulse spiked. Yeah, I said quickly. There was a pause, then a muffled handover. I could hear a door close. Footsteps, then static. Noah's voice came through flat. What? It wasn't angry, just distant. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out at first. Then I said I wanted to check in. Just that long silence. Then you don't get to check in, Dad. Not after 2 years of missing everything. The line clicked. He hung up. I stared at the phone for a long time. Then I set it down, walked to the kitchen, and poured a glass of water. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't sink into shame or spiral into self-blame like I used to. Instead, I took out the journal, wrote one sentence, "Today I showed up." Even if it wasn't received, that's when I remembered something. Walt had said in passing, "We're not responsible for how people meet our honesty, only for offering it sincerely." I read it again. This time it sank in. The next morning I woke at 5:42. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I made black coffee. I sat in silence, then I lit a candle and whispered, "This day is mine." Not because it would be perfect, but because it would be mine to meet with presence, with purpose, with the humility to try again. Later that week, Walt gave me a new exercise. Try this, he said. At the end of each day, ask yourself, did I move closer to the man I admire or farther from him? I raised an eyebrow. That sounds brutal. He nodded. It is, but clarity often is. So I started doing that. Each night I'd close my eyes, replay the day, and answer honestly. Some nights the answer was yes, a little. Other nights it was not today, but even that became part of the process. The distance between who I was and who I wanted to be was no longer something to fear. It was something to cross one intentional step at a time. I stopped scheduling every minute, started making space for what I called soft time reading, walking, thinking. I noticed that the less I filled my hours with noise, the more life seemed to speak. Sometimes in silence, sometimes in the way sunlight had hit the floor at 9 a.m., sometimes in how a stranger held the door, and sometimes in the ache of hearing nothing from my son and choosing not to run from that ache. By the end of that month, I had a new rhythm. Mornings were mine, afternoons were for small acts of service, volunteering at the library, fixing up a broken bench, helping a neighbor carry groceries. Evenings were for journaling and breath, none of it flashy, all of it real. One Friday, I asked Walt, when do you stop needing the structure? When does it become who you are? He smiled, folded his glasses, and said, when the quiet becomes more compelling than the chaos. That night I stood by my window as the city quieted, cars slowed, shadows stretched, and I thought about all the time I'd wasted chasing urgency over intention. So I wrote, this life isn't something to manage. It's something to meet with both hands open, and just like that, the day was done. No trophies, no applause, just a quiet peace that reminded me, tomorrow is waiting. And if I meet it well, the day will be mine. There are moments you remember not by how loud they are, but by how still the world becomes when they happen. The sky was clear that day, late autumn. That kind of brittle sunlight that doesn't warm you, just sharpens everything it touches. Walt hadn't shown up for our usual Thursday coffee at the library. I waited 10 minutes, then 20. At 30, I called the front desk. The woman on the line sounded kind but tired. Walt's not volunteering this week, she said. He's going through something. That word sat heavy in my chest. The next afternoon, I found him. He was sitting alone on a bench behind the library, bundled in that old cardigan, a thick wool scarf around his neck. His face looked the same, but smaller somehow, like someone had dimmed the volume behind his eyes. You okay? I asked, taking a slow seat beside him. He didn't answer right away. Then, without looking at me, he said, I've got 4 to 6 months. The words didn't land right away. Months, I repeated. He nodded. Lung cancer. Caught it late. I don't remember what I said after that. Maybe I didn't say anything at all. We just sat there, the wind brushing past like it knew to stay quiet. I kept waiting for Walt to fall apart, but he didn't. His hands were steady, his breath calm, the same stillness he always carried. Only now it felt unshakable. Finally, I said, "You don't seem scared." He turned, smiling softly. "I've been preparing to die for 30 years. There was no bravado in his voice, just truth, clean and clear. "That's what this practice is," he continued. "Not some moral checklist, not some philosophical game. It's training for loss, for impermanence, for letting go. I didn't know what to say. So I asked the only thing I could, what happens now?" He looked out across the park and lived. Later that evening, I found an envelope tucked into the front door of my apartment. My name on the front in Walt's familiar handwriting. Inside was a journal, leather-bound, weathered. A note clipped to the front. "You asked what shaped me. This is it." Read slowly. "Forgive the mess." I opened the first page and saw the date, April 17th, 1985. The entries weren't polished. Some were no more than fragments. But together they painted a map, one built not of destinations, but of quiet battles. Regrets. Walt had written down so he wouldn't repeat them, failures he refused to hide from. Small acts of service that didn't change the world but shaped his soul. There were entries about his wife, long past, about temptations he overcame, about his temper which once ruled him, about his body aging and failing slowly, and how even that became a teacher. But the part that undid me, a paragraph from 10 years ago written after he lost someone he never named grief, is the sandpaper that sharpens the shape of our soul. We resist it, but it carves us into who we're supposed to be if we let it. That night, I didn't sleep much. I stayed up reading entry after entry until my eyes blurred. And when the morning finally came, I walked back to the bench behind the library. Walt was there again. I handed the journal back, but he waved me off. "It's yours now," he said. "Mine's done. Yours is still writing itself." The next week, I stopped trying to manage my life. Instead, I leaned into the friction, into the things that hurt. I called Noah again. This time, I didn't plan what to say. I just called and let it ring. He didn't pick up, but I left a message. "I don't expect you to forgive me," I said, "but I'll keep showing up, even if it's just to listen." Then I hung up. It didn't feel like a victory, but it didn't feel like defeat either. It felt true. I started volunteering more at the library, not because I had extra time, but because something in me needed less time alone. I helped restock books, sweep leaves from the entryway, fix a broken bench outside that no one had touched in months. Each act was small, but each one made me feel more real. Less like I was floating through my life, more like I was meeting it. Walt and I met a few more times, but our conversations grew shorter. He tired easily now. Sometimes we just sit in silence, and strangely, those silences said more than any of our earlier talks. One day after he left early, I stayed behind and opened the back cover of the journal he gave me. Inside, scribbled in faint ink, was one final line. "You're ready." That broke me. Not into despair, but into something else. A kind of raw, wide-open stillness I'd never known. From that day forward, I started carrying the journal with me everywhere. Not just as a keepsake, but as a reminder that transformation doesn't come from escape, it comes from endurance. That meaning isn't found in grand gestures, it's made through friction, and that life doesn't promise comfort, only opportunity. At night when the world quieted, I'd sit at my desk and write, not to fix anything, not to inspire anyone, just to remember the man who taught me that dying isn't the end of the journey. It's the moment you find out whether you lived aligned with the path you claim to walk. And the only way to prepare for that moment is to walk that path daily. I never asked Walt what his final Stoic lesson was, but I think I know now. It wasn't in a quote or a lecture, it was in how he lived calm in the face of mortality, gracious in the face of pain, still even as his body failed. He didn't rage against the fire, he let the friction shape him, and in doing so, he passed that fire to me. Not to burn, but to light the way. There's a moment just before you speak in front of a crowd when your breath catches. It's not fear exactly, it's the weight of being known. That afternoon, I stood in front of a small group at the library, Walt's library. People filled the chairs. Some I recognized, most I didn't. A simple photo of Walt sat on a wooden table beside me. No frame, just a quiet smile captured in a moment. none of us knew would be his last, I was asked to speak. Not because I was closest to him, but because I was someone he changed. I'd never written a eulogy before, so I didn't. Instead, I wrote a list. 10 things I began that Walt taught me not through lectures or philosophy, but through the way he lived. My voice trembled a little, but I kept going. Start your day before the world tells you who you are. 2. Let silence finish your sentences. 3. Be kind, especially when no one sees it. Make soup, not for Instagram, just for nourishment. That one got a soft laugh. Carry a book always not to impress, but to remember. Journal like someone you love will read it one day. 7. Practice small courage. Answer the phone, say the truth, ask for help. 8. Accept death not as a punishment, but as a compass. 9. Forgive faster, you'll need that space later. And then I paused. 10. Discipline is love, aimed inward. That last one hung in the air like a slow breath. No applause, just stillness. Exactly the kind Walt would have liked. As I stepped down, I noticed a figure in the back of the room, arms folded, shoulders hunched. Noah, I hadn't seen him come in. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just watched. I thought about walking up to him afterwards, saying something, anything. But when the room emptied, he was gone. Still, something about it felt different this time, because for once, I wasn't chasing a result, I wasn't performing. I was simply there. And that mattered more than I expected. That night, I didn't write anything profound in the journal. Just one line. Presence is the practice. 2 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. Hey, Mom, said you spoke at the library. Wish I heard it. No name, no emoji. But I knew who it was. I stared at the screen for a full minute before replying. You being there was enough. No typing bubble, no instant response, just silence. But again, this time it didn't feel empty. It felt open, like something was waiting to begin again. Not with grand gestures, but with presence, with patience, with discipline. The next week, I started something new. Every Saturday morning, I hosted a quiet reflection group at the library. No lectures, no agendas. Just space for people to sit, write, and talk if they felt moved to. We read passages from the Stoics, sometimes Seneca, sometimes Marcus, but mostly we read from each other. One woman shared her battle with grief. A teenager talked about anxiety without apology. A retired veteran described how silence was harder than war. Each story reminded me that discipline isn't always action. Sometimes it's sitting with pain without trying to fix it. Sometimes it's choosing to stay in the discomfort long enough to hear what it's teaching you. One morning as we were packing up, I looked down at the chair across from me and saw something carved into the underside of the armrest. It was faint, probably old, but it read, "Who will you be when no one's watching?" I smiled. That felt like a question Walt would have asked, or maybe one he'd want us to keep asking ourselves. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the streets turned gold, I walked past the coffee shop I used to haunt during my busy years. I didn't go in. Didn't need the caffeine, didn't need the noise. Instead, I walked toward the park. And there on a bench with peeling green paint and initials scratched into the wood sat my son, Noah. I slowed. He looked up, gave a small nod, didn't say anything. So I sat beside him. No performance, no prepared lines, just the two of us, breathing in sync with the world around us. The silence between us wasn't awkward this time. It was wide, spacious, real. Finally, he said, "You seem different." I glanced at him. "I am." He nodded again. "Took you long enough." We both laughed. It was small but honest, and it was enough. We didn't solve everything that night, but we started something. Not with promises, but with presence. Later, back at home, I opened the journal Walt had left me and added a final page to the back. One not written for me, but for whoever would carry it next. If you're reading this, you're probably wondering what the point of all this is. The journaling, the silence, the reflection, the friction. Here's what I've learned. You don't find your purpose, you become it. One quiet day at a time. I closed the journal, turned off the light, and in the soft hush of night, I smiled. Because even at the edge of everything, I thought I knew. I wasn't afraid anymore. I had learned to sit in the center of the circle, the one that life draws around you, The one that says, this is where you begin again. It's strange how transformation rarely announces itself. There's no drum roll, no spotlight, no defining line between who you were and who you've become. It just settles in. You notice it when the way you move through the world shifts, when your first instinct is no longer to react, but to reflect. When peace becomes your default, not because life got easier, but because you got sturdier. A few months after Walt's memorial, I found myself sitting in his favorite library chair, the old one near the window where morning light made the dust sparkle like tiny reminders that nothing really stands still. I had my journal open in my lap, his journal now filled with both of our handwriting, and for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to answer the question that had once haunted me. What do I actually need to work on every day? Not to impress anyone, not to prove I'm healed or productive or enlightened, but to keep becoming the kind of man I'd be proud to meet in the mirror. So I made my own list. Not aspirational, not idealistic, just real. 10 things I now know are worth practicing every single day. The kind of habits that don't make you famous, but do make you free. On your attitude, because how you meet the world becomes how the world meets you. Not every day will feel good, but every day gives you the chance to choose how you respond. I still catch myself slipping into old moods, cynicism, impatience. But now I notice I correct, I reset. It's not about being cheerful, it's about being responsible for your lens, your communication. Not just the words you speak, but how you listen, how you pause before replying, how you own your truth without weaponizing it. Walt used to say, speak like someone's healing depends on your tone. He wasn't wrong. 3. Self-discipline, not the flashy kind, the quiet kind. The kind that wakes up early even when you don't feel like it. The kind that walks past distractions, that honors commitments. No one is tracking but you, because that's where integrity lives in what you do when it doesn't look impressive. Oh sure, your mindset. I used to think mindset was something you had. Now I see it as something you shape day by day, thought by thought. I've learned to replace, I can't. With I'm learning to replace. What if I fail with, what if I grow, and it makes all the difference? 5. Time. Not managing it, but meeting it. With intention, with space, with honesty about what really matters. I no longer jam my schedule just to feel productive. I protect open time the way I once protected deadlines. Because white space isn't laziness, it's clarity. 6. Finances. Not because money is everything, but because peace costs less when you're not constantly reacting to bills and impulse. I track my spending. Now I delay more than I indulge. I invest in what aligns with who I'm becoming, not who I was trying to impress. 7. Knowledge. I read more now than I did in college, but I read slower. I don't chase page counts. I chase understanding, and I try to live what I learn. Even if it's just one idea a week, because applied knowledge, that's where real change happens. 8. Relationships. I don't need hundreds of people around me, but I do need presence with the ones who matter. I reach out now, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable, because connection is not just a feeling, it's a decision. 9. Purpose. Walt told me once, you don't find purpose, you remember it. I didn't understand then, but now I do. Purpose lives in how you do things, not just what you do. It's in the tone of your voice, the way you treat strangers, the intention behind your work, and the only way to keep it alive is to live it every day. 10. Gratitude. Not for the big things, but for the overlooked things. Warm coffee, a full tank of gem, a sunrise. I didn't earn. Even on hard days, especially on hard days, I write down one thing I'm thankful for. Because gratitude doesn't mean ignoring what's wrong. It means anchoring yourself in what's still good. That's the list. Not a formula, not a rule book, just a compass. I've taped it to my bathroom mirror. Not to perfect these things, but to practice them, to come back to them over and over, like breath, like prayer, like truth. The other morning as I sat journaling by the window, Noah walked into the kitchen. He's been staying with me more. No big reconciliation speech. No dramatic moment, just slow mornings and shared meals and quieter space between us. He saw the journal on the table. Still writing, he asked. Every day, I said. He poured himself some coffee, sat across from me, looked out the window. After a while, he said, "I think I want to start." I smiled. "You don't have to be good at it." He shook his head. "I just want to be honest in it." And just like that, something shifted. Not everything has been fixed, but that's not the point anymore. The point is presence. The point is practice. The point is the man I'm becoming, only at one small decision at a time. If you're still listening, maybe you've been waiting for some big truth, some final takeaway. So here it is. Your life won't change overnight, but it will change if you change what you do every day. Not all at once, but brick by brick, word by word, step by step, you become who you are, slowly. And that's not weakness, that's wisdom. So today, ask yourself, what will I work on not to be perfect, but to be aligned? Start there and keep going, because in the end, the man you become is the man you practice being every single day.